Everybody for coming, and before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendigo, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit Peoples, and we're very pleased to be on this land today. I want to thank all of the members of the media for joining us today, and I am joined by my colleagues, Jean Yip, the Member of Parliament for Scarborough Agincourt, Gang Tan, the Member of Parliament for Don Valley North, Sean Chen, the Member of Parliament for Scarborough North, would have been here this morning and isn't able to get here. So, but I know he is with us, and each of us, including myself, the Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill, we all have the privilege and honor of representing ridings with a large number of Chinese Canadian constituents. And we all know that the current approach to cannabis does not work. It has allowed criminals and organized crime to profit while failing to keep cannabis out of the hands of our Canadian youth. In many cases, it is easier for our kids to buy cannabis than it is cigarettes. That is why the Government of Canada, after extensive consultation with law enforcement, health and safety experts, and the hard work on the task force on cannabis, introduced legislation to strictly regulate and restrict access to cannabis. The Act, also known as C-45, creates a strict legal framework for controlling the production, distribution, sale, and possession of cannabis in Canada. And today, we have with us Bill Blair, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and also to the Minister of Health. And Parliamentary Secretary Blair will update you and take questions about the Government of Canada's approach to regulating and restricting access to cannabis. Parliamentary Secretary Blair, if you want to join me, and our colleagues, maybe what we'll do is we'll have you up here. Let's give Bill a hand.
I'm very, very pleased to join my colleagues here today with you all today to talk a little bit about the legislation that we brought forward. But I'd like to begin with why. I think it's very important to explain to all Canadians, and I know that there are concerns within the Chinese community, and it's important that we explain precisely why the Government of Canada is changing the way in which we control this drug in our society. And as Mary has already told you, the current system of cannabis control, marijuana control in Canada, is failing us. It is not protecting our children. We have the highest rates of marijuana use among our children of any country in the world. And this is unacceptable to us because marijuana can be a very dangerous drug for young people. It can affect the development of their brain. It can affect who they hang around with and how successful they will be in life and in school. And because of the way in which we have been controlling it, it could also result in a serious criminal record for that young person that they will carry for the rest of their lives. And so, in recognition that, first of all, we have far too many of our children using this dangerous drug, and secondly, that the drug that they are using, they buy from criminals. The criminals have complete control of the production, the distribution of this drug, and they are responsible for selling it to our children. And so the government has consulted very broadly across the country to determine how this should be more properly dealt with. And for example, one of my responsibilities was to consult with the law enforcement community. And one of the things that law enforcement has told us, the police have told us, is that the enforcement of the existing law, the prohibition against cannabis under the criminal law, has resulted in the criminalization of very many children. And the police in 2013 came to the Government of Canada and they asked us to bring in a new system of regulatory control for dealing with children in possession of cannabis. And that was through a ticketing regime that would result in the child getting a ticket and not getting a criminal record. And this is precisely what we have done. We're working with the provinces and territories. The Government of Canada has brought forward legislation that lists the criminal prohibitions so that the police will no longer charge the child criminally, but give them authority to the province to enact regulation. And in every province in Canada, and in particular in Ontario, and I will share this with you, in Ontario, the province of Ontario passed legislation in December of 2017, and under that regulation, under those regulations, it's called the Ontario Cannabis Act, they have created in Section 10 an absolute prohibition for the possession, purchase, and consumption of cannabis for all young persons under the age of 19. And so now, in Ontario, not only will it remain a serious offense for young people to have cannabis, but now the police are empowered to enforce this properly. in the way in which they asked to enforce it with a ticket. And so they'll be able to seize the drug from the child. They'll be able to issue a ticket. The ticket will have a fine. There are consequences for the child, but does not result in a criminal record. And I think this is one of the most important things. And you know, I have heard from many people within the Chinese community, and they have been misinformed. They have been told by people who wish to make them afraid that this new law will make it possible for young people to possess marijuana. And this is frankly a lie. This is simply not true. The truth is that the law in Canada, the federal law and the provincial law combined together, will continue to make it an offense for all young persons to possess, purchase, or consume cannabis. But it will not result in the criminalization of those children, because the consequences of a criminal record, many parents have told me, they worry about the health of their children. They worry about their success in school. They worry about who they're hanging around with if they're dealing with criminals to purchase these drugs. But they're also worried that they will be caught by the police and end up with a criminal record which will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And so in response to that concern, the Government of Canada has brought forward a very comprehensive system of regulation. I also want to advise you that what I have discovered as a police chief before I was a politician is when something is prohibited, you cannot regulate it. And so it's only by lifting the prohibition that we are able to introduce a very comprehensive system of very effective regulation in every aspect of the production, distribution, and consumption of cannabis. You know, previously there was only one law that said it was against the law, it was a crime to possess cannabis. But we are lifting that law and replacing it with hundreds and hundreds of pages of regulation. And only yesterday, for example, the Government of Canada released new regulations that will pertain to all sorts of restrictions on advertising and packaging and the place of sale and how this product will be packaged and sold, which will include health warnings and other information that will help Canadian adults make better choices. It's also, because we have now regulated the substance, allowed us to make very substantial investments in public education. And for example, the Government of Canada has put forward $108.5 million for the education of young people and for their parents, for their doctors, and for their teachers, so that young people can have better information about the consequences of using this drug, because it is the government's intention to restrict their access to it, but also to give them the information that will help them make a better choice, a smarter and healthier choice, not to use this drug. Because the great risk of this drug is the earlier they begin to use it, the more frequently they use it, and the higher potency of what they're using, the greater the risk to the child. And so through our restrictions, we were going to make it much more difficult for the child to gain access to the drug. But through our education, we are also going to help them make better choices so that they do not use this drug at an early age and they do not use it frequently. And all of those things, we believe, will make it safer and healthier for our children. And finally, we are also creating a new legal industry. A new legal industry that will employ tens of thousands of Canadians in well-paying, regulated jobs. The new industry will be responsible for the production of cannabis, and instead of doing it in a house that is being destroyed in your neighborhood, the production of cannabis will now take place in a strictly controlled factory setting, where there will be very strict controls on sanitation, security, smell abatement, and where every aspect of the production is regulated by Health Canada. That will enable us to ensure that any product that is being consumed by Canadian adults is safe and healthy. But it will also enable us to control that industry. Right now it is controlled by criminals, but we're taking this business away from criminals and we're creating a new regulated industry. People who will pay their taxes, who will pay their employees, who will be good corporate citizens in our communities and do a better job of ensuring that that which is being consumed by adults is safer and healthier. And we're taking away the opportunity for criminals, and at the same time, and I hope this is very important for people to recognize, in this regulation, we are creating new regulations for a regulated production of cannabis. But illegal production remains a serious criminal offense. And so it will remain a serious crime for which the police will be able to arrest illegal producers and illegal drug traffickers. All of the authorities of the police are retained under the new law. But in addition to enforcement, we are now offering competition in the marketplace. And for adult Canadians who choose to use this drug, they will now have a legitimate, healthier, lower risk choice. And the money that they spend on this drug will go into a public fund through taxes and the collection of excise, where we can make greater investments in prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation for our citizens. And so that is all I wish to share with you today. I just simply wish to explain, because I've heard from so many parents, they are concerned that there is a gap, they believe, or they have been told there's a gap in this legislation that allows young people to possess less than 5 grams of cannabis. This is simply not true. And what they need to understand is in the province of Ontario and in every province and territory, I have worked very closely with those provinces and territories to make sure that they have legislation that creates a provincial offense for the possession, purchase, and consumption of cannabis. It's a very comprehensive law. It's a more effective way to enforce the law. It does not result in the criminalization of our children, and it is precisely what the police asked the government of Canada to do. In 2013, they urged us to have a ticketing scheme so that they could deal with children without criminalizing them, and we have said yes to that. And to ensure that the police are ready to do the job, we have also made substantial amounts of money available for their training and for their equipment. We are providing them with new technologies and new training and additional funding to make sure that they are ready to do the job. And I will tell you, I've had conversations recently with the RCMP, with the Ontario Provincial Police, with my own police service, the Toronto Police Service, with the Sûreté of Quebec, and with other large urban centers across the country. They have been working very hard over the past 2 years, and they will be ready. And for the other police services that still have a little bit of work to do, we have put off the updated implementation until mid-October, October 17th, to give them an opportunity to get ready. And now I'll be very happy to take any questions that you may have, or step aside if you wish to make
Question number 1.
Can I get, okay, did you mention that the provincial laws be changed or updated in order to enforce, for the federal release of the
Yes,
one?
in December of 2017, last December, the Ontario government passed legislation, the Cannabis Act. It was actually Bill 11 in 2017. The bill passed. It will take effect on the same date in which the criminal prohibition is lifted October 17th. And under that act, in Section 10, subsection 1, it creates an offense for any young person under the age of 19 to purchase, possess, or consume cannabis. It is actually very similar to the law that we have in Ontario with respect to alcohol. So if a young person, for example, is caught with a bottle of beer, then they are given the police will seize it and give them a ticket for it, but they do not get a criminal record. And under the new Ontario legislation, which has been passed in Ontario, and it's now part of the Ontario statutes, it's actually Section 26, subsection 10(1). It actually has right in the legislation an offense for the purchase, possession, and consumption of cannabis for all young people under the age of 19. It's an enforceable prohibition, and it answers directly the concerns that have been raised by so many parents about, because in the federal law, it's an offense for having more than 5 grams. We went to the provinces and said, you have to cover all of every amount. And so all of the provinces have brought forward their legislation. I have actually copies of them as well. So all of the provinces and territories have all brought forward their own legislation to make sure that offense is in place. The province, I will also tell you, it's worthwhile reading that section because the province has also brought in additional regulations regarding the distribution and the consumption of cannabis in Ontario, which will do a far better job of protecting our communities, making sure that where adults choose to use this is done in a socially responsible way, and to control where it would be sold in a government-regulated store. Right now, it's sold in every street corner and in every schoolyard in the province, and we're going to eliminate that illegal trafficking and replace it with a regulated system of distribution.
So this is part of the second meeting. So you said in the law, every household has the rights to cultivate 4 plants at home. But if in the home, that is, they have children and always have children to be visited in this home. So how can you make sure that the law protects children from the marijuana and also they are not touched by those marijuana?
Yes, ma'am. And let me just be clear. The law does not give everyone the right to have 4 plants in the home. What it does is it creates an offense for having more than 4 plants. And the reason that was determined is because we know that criminals have used personal or home cultivation in houses to supply the criminal market. But they don't use 4 plants, they have 400 plants, so 4,000 plants in those houses, and they destroy those houses. But for personal consumption, it will be a federal offense to produce more than 4 plants in a household. But we have also said to the provinces and territories and municipalities that they may bring in such regulation as they deem necessary to ensure that can be done safely. And so they can put additional restrictions on the number of plants. They can put restrictions on issues such as fencing, security, camera surveillance, sanitation, smell abatement. They can, the municipality and the province can bring in regulation that prohibits it taking place anywhere near a school or community center or places where children frequent. There are all sorts of opportunities within the provincial regulation to put in such terms and conditions that restrict personal cultivation. In the criminal law, the criminal law is the most serious law in the country. This is the federal law. And we have created an offense for those who choose to grow more than 4 plants. That would be a criminal offense if someone produces more than 4 plants. But in each of the provinces and territories, they can bring in such regulation that control and restrict where that personal cultivation can take place. And so the concerns that you raise about the access that children might have to it, or the impact it might have on a neighbor, those concerns are most appropriately addressed by the provincial authority using provincial regulation and provincial law, and by municipalities as well. And one of the things, for example, a municipality can do, a municipality can require that anyone choosing to cultivate cannabis in their home must acquire a permit from the municipality. They can be terms and conditions of that permit. They can require people to pay a fee, for example. They can require them to abide by certain conditions of security and sanitation and safety. And they can also require that anyone who wishes to then sell that house where the cultivation of cannabis is taking place must report that to a seller. All of those things can only be dealt with under municipal and provincial regulation. It's very important, I think, for Canadians to understand that there are 3 levels of legislation that are in effect in regulating and controlling cannabis. The federal law deals with the most serious offenses and creates thresholds above which the activity would be deemed criminal. But we have recognized and acknowledged the authority of the provinces and territories to implement their own regulations that can control certain behaviors to ensure that, subject to the terms of the conditions that exist in their jurisdictions, that the regulations can be most appropriately attuned to those circumstances, and municipalities as well. You know, and we think back, and I'll give you an example to tobacco use. 15 years ago, almost 22% of Canadians were using tobacco. And at that time, municipalities began to bring in regulation that controlled where smoking would take place in public places, in bars and restaurants, and in parks, etc. And through their leadership and through those bylaws, we saw a significant change in societal attitudes to the control and regulation of tobacco use in our society. We have not been able to exercise that same level of control with cannabis smoking, simply because it's the only thing that exists is a criminal prohibition. But by creating a regulated environment, the provinces and municipalities can now bring in comprehensive regulation that control all aspects of the consumption of this drug, so that we can make sure it is not consumed in a public place, it is not consumed in a way or in a manner that would put children at risk, that it is not cultivated in a manner that would put children at risk. And that can be done most appropriately through municipal and provincial regulation. And I will tell you that the police in particular are very familiar with this, because most of the laws, for example, that pertain to highway safety, there are criminal laws pertaining to highway safety, but the vast majority of regulations for highway safety are done under provincial regulation. They are enforceable, they are effective. It's the right level of governance for those types of offenses using provincial and municipal authority.
Yeah, follow-up
Of course.
questions.
We're concerned that if the provincial governments make a law and also which is contrary with federal law, we're concerned that will be many lawsuits will be following if that is some contrary between those governments.
I was a police officer for 39 years, and I'm not nervous about going to court at all. All issues of law are subject to litigation and appeal. That's our criminal justice system, and we are bringing forward a very new system of regulatory control for cannabis, one which we believe, and on overwhelming evidence, is a far more effective way to deal with this drug, but we know that there will be some legal challenges. There has been some suggestion, for example, that if the provincial regulations are in some way in contradiction to the federal regulations, could that be litigated? Not by the federal government. We've made it very clear that we will not be taking the provinces to court on this. But if an individual Canadian chooses to challenge that in court, then the courts have the authority and the responsibility to make a determination. But we believe that there is great consensus I've worked with provinces and territories very closely for the past 2 years. There's overwhelming consensus among us of three things. The first is that the current system is failing our children and we have to do a better job. We have a responsibility to protect our kids. And the federal government believes that, the provinces believe that, the municipalities believe that, and Canadians believe that. We have a responsibility to do a better job protecting our kids. We are also find it unacceptable that criminals make billions of dollars in profit from this every year. And so we are all in agreement that we need to do what is necessary to take that criminal opportunity away from criminals. And finally, we all believe that we have a responsibility to protect the health of Canadians. So when 1/3 of Canadians choose to use a substance, which currently is unregulated, untested, and unsafe, we believe we have a responsibility to change that and to create a regulated supply so that Canadian adults who choose to use this drug can do so in a lower risk and safer way, and at the same time not result in billions of dollars in profit for criminals.
So you said there will be criminal offense for more than 4 plants for each family. So how are you going to check them? So do you have enough police force to check them, and how they are going to check knock for each door? And if they need to search inside, they have to issue a warrant. So
well, it is quite frankly exactly the same problem the police have today. Because if people are cultivating cannabis plants in their home, criminals do it, as I said, with hundreds and hundreds of plants, and it's an enormous challenge for the police. And when I was the police chief in Toronto, we had 2 full-time teams went around looking for organized crimes, criminal grow-ops that were all taking place in houses. The houses were being destroyed by this activity. For the police to enforce a threshold of more than 4 plants, it is no more difficult for the police to enforce more than 4 plants than 0. And it's a very different challenge when you're dealing with criminal organizations that are growing hundreds. We've created a very bright line. We've said that an individual can grow a maximum of 4 plants for personal consumption, but if they were to sell any part of that, then they will be creating a serious criminal offense. And so that remains a crime, and the police will enforce that. But for the police to get the evidence of, for example, if someone had 5 plants instead of 4, then they will have to be able to identify the 5th plant. And the challenge of doing that is exactly the same as identifying the challenge of the first plant. They still have to go in and make observations, and they still have to gather their evidence. But for the overwhelming majority of Canadians, they'll be able to engage in this activity in a lawful way within very strict limits and according to the terms and conditions put in place by the province and the municipality to ensure that it can become safe.
Another question.
Do you think the police officer across this country, do you think the police service across this country is ready for the marijuana law passed?
Actually, I do. I've had conversations with the RCMP, the OPP, the Toronto Police Service, the Sûreté de Quebec, the Montreal Police Service, and many others who said they're definitely ready. As a matter of fact, I think it's important to understand sort of the history of how we came to this legislation. In 2008, the law changed in Canada to allow for what we call drug recognition experts. And the police chiefs of Canada, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, of which I was a member, made a unanimous ask of the federal government to provide them with resources to train their officers. They never got that money. In 2009, there was another resolution from the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police asking the government to provide them with the authority to conduct a mandatory alcohol screening test. And nothing was done about that. In 2013, they asked the federal government to give them access to oral fluids test kits for testing for drugs for impaired drivers. And nothing was done about that. When we brought forward our legislation in 2016, we not only brought forward the legislation that would give the police the authorities that they had asked for, but we put $274 million on the table and said, we will pay for the training of your officers. We will pay for the technologies that you have said you needed. And so most of the police services in Canada have been working hard to get their people trained. And in fact, we've seen almost a 50% increase in drug recognition experts just over the past year. And we have many, the funds are in place and the training is taking place to get police officers ready. We know that this is a change for some. And some of the police services are saying, until the money actually comes to them, they are concerned with their ability to do this. But I have been responsible for running, I ran the largest police service in Canada for a decade. And I will tell you, the police know how to do this job. They have been asking for a ticketing scheme, for example, to write a ticket for possession of cannabis for a young person, rather than arresting that child. Because arresting that child, first of all, it's about 22 hours of work, and it does not result in anything good for the child. And so the police asked in 2013 to give us the authority to write a ticket. We have said yes. We have agreed with that, and we have provided them with that authority. And those are tickets that they write thousands, hundreds of thousands of times every year. And so they know how to write those tickets. They asked for that authority, and we've said yes. I believe they'll be ready. And I appreciate that there's some training that needs to take place for the police in the use of the new technologies, for example. But we field tested those technologies in 8 Canadian police services in 2016. The training took only a few hours, and the police reported back to us that they worked fine and they were very comfortable using the technology. So this isn't an overwhelming task. I will tell you, I have great confidence in the police services in Canada. I have great confidence in their leadership, and I have great confidence in the officers to do their job. They have asked us for the tools, the training, and the resources that they needed to keep us safe. And our government has said yes. We have said yes to everything they've asked for. We've made those tools, training, and resources available, and I have great confidence that the police will do an extraordinary job of keeping us safe. And by the way, the new impaired legislation, we've enacted a new authority there called mandatory alcohol screening. And in every other jurisdiction where they've introduced that, they've seen a significant drop in impaired death. In Ireland, when they introduced it, 23% reduction in impaired deaths in that country. In New South Wales and in Australia, when they introduced that measure, there was a 35% reduction in impaired death. In Canada, 4 people died every day as a result of impaired driving. We can save 1 of those people every single day with this new legislation. I know the police have been anxious for this authority, and I know they'll do a good job.
Bill, we wanted to speak really briefly, because we've certainly been hearing from the community, and we've already talked about, about ensuring that access to cannabis is not available to young people, and maybe talk about the changes to the law that for offenders, if they were to provide it to young people.
One of the things that we said as a government, when we began to look at the way in which this drug is controlled in our society, we said our number one priority is to protect children. Our number one priority is to keep this drug out of the hands of children. And so how do we go about doing that? First of all, we have bringing in a system of very strict regulatory control for its production and distribution. It will only be sold lawfully in Ontario in a government-regulated store, similar to the LCBO, but it'll be a cannabis control board store, and it'll be sold in that regulated thing by a responsible adult who will be responsible for not selling it to children who will be accountable for it. In addition to, it's just not a matter of restricting their access to it, although that's important. For individuals who continue to sell to children, we've created 2 new offenses in the criminal code. The first one is an offense for selling to persons under the age of 19, and it carries a maximum penalty of 14 years. It's a new offense, and it's for trafficking to children. And the other offense that we created was for using children in the trafficking of this drug, because we have seen that in many communities where drug dealers will use children under the age of 19 to sell for them, because the consequences are less for them. And so for that drug dealer who's using a child, we created a new offense, which also carries a 14-year maximum penalty. And so stricter regulation to restrict their access to this drug, greater consequences for those who would sell to our children, and finally, significant investment in public education. Because what we have heard is parents, teachers, doctors, and young people themselves needed more information about the risks of this drug. And they are health risks, and they are social risks. The health risks, I think, are obvious. There are very significant health risks to our children in using this drug. That's why our government has been encouraged to act. We are compelled to act because the current system is failing our children and putting them at great risk. And so we are acting to restrict their access to it. We are acting to deal more efficiently and more seriously with those who would put our kids at risk. And finally, we are acting to make sure that parents and teachers and doctors and kids have the information they need so that they will understand what the real risks are. The health risks to their health and their developing adolescent mind, but also the social risk. The social risk of a young person being successful in life and finishing school, and who they're hanging around with, having to do business with criminals to acquire this drug. Organized crime, only results in the type of violence we see taking place in the city of Toronto and other communities around the GTA, where young people are involved in illegal drug trafficking and involved in gun violence as they compete for the turf in which this drug is sold. When we take that business away from these kids, we make those communities safer. We create better futures for those young people, and we take the billions of dollars in profit away from criminals and reinvest it in the public. So it creates good business opportunity, it creates good jobs, it creates a source of tax and excise revenue for the government to reinvest in education, treatment, and rehabilitation. And all of those things are much more positive than the current system. And so whenever anybody says to me, let's slow down, many people said that, let's slow down. And my answer to that is, when we wait another year, when every single day organized crime makes $20 million a day in organized crime, if we give them another year of that kind of illicit profit, right now the health and safety of our children are in the hands of criminals. Would we leave our children with criminals for one more year? That's not acceptable to us. And so we are prepared to act. And we have been working with the provinces, territories, municipalities, and the police across the country. And I'm very confident. With the date that has been set on October 17th, we will begin a process of orderly implementation that over the coming years will see a reduction in the number of our children who are being exposed to this drug, a reduction in criminals profiting from it, and a safer environment for them.
Could I direct the question to the three MPs, the Chinese MPs? So I think in our Chinese tradition, drug is prohibited by the family, so the kids are not like encouraged or used in the family. But if the parents themselves using the drugs at home, how can they persuade or prohibit their kids using the drugs? How can you persuade the Chinese family, the parents, that this law is good for the Chinese tradition?
So I can take that. I think what we're trying to do here in this legal framework is to strictly regulate access to cannabis. And we already know, based on our data, that a lot of young people currently consume cannabis. And in Canada, one of the highest jurisdictions in the world. So what we're trying to do here as a government is to make sure that there's a legal framework, as Parliamentary Secretary Blair talked about, to make it safer for our young people so that our young people under 18 don't have access to or use cannabis. Simple. We are acting as a government, and we need to act as a government. So as I would say, like in Cantonese, and you know what, I would actually say this other thing, I would also say one other thing. I know we have been hearing a lot from the Chinese Canadian community, which is why we've invited members of the Chinese press here today. So you're going to see a press release that is translated in Chinese so that you're able to share that with your viewers and your readers. I think it's really important that we provide accurate information about what this law is about, and of course we're always happy to take questions and provide further information to the community. But it's really important. We thought today, that's what I want people to understand. Gang may want to say something, Gene, but this law is about the
即係用晒型。係啊，做嘢嘛。你又係台灣客㗎，有乜做啊？
好，那我是邱宝郎，大家都叫我阿郎哥啊。那我们这一次呢，代表客委会来下乡，我们一共要去7个城市。好，那我们多伦多是第3个城市。那为什么要来这里呢？因为派我们2位过来啊，我们就可以来服务我们所有的乡亲， 无论是100位，无论是80位等等，来传达的就是我们传统的客家菜以及创新的客家菜，在地取材，让我们所有的乡亲们啊，无论你是客家人、非客家人，你只要肯定客家，那你喜欢客家，都可以来参加。我觉得这一次的活动啊，客委会办得非常非常的棒，那让我们所有的乡亲啊，体验到我们客家的一些似文似草啊，或者是我们在地食材的演变啊，或者是食材的选择啊，怎么样去运用，怎么样让客家菜继续传承。那这一次客委会也希望我们这一次参加的所有的学员们，能够当作是一个种子教练啊，回去可以做给你的家人吃，或者是来另外再开课，把我们所教你们所学，可以让这个客家菜在多伦多可以发扬更大。而且我们如果办得好的话，那也许主委说明年还是有机会，让我们每一年做不一样的客家菜来衍生，让我们所有的多伦多的好朋友呢、乡亲们，你能够学得更多，吃得更健康。
这些来多伦多带来什么菜色？
这一次带来的非常多，例如说我们这一次啊带来是我们传统客家小炒，还有我们的福菜肉丸子，然后再来牛问水，然后客家的麻吉，然后再来做板条，还有炒板条，还有我们的大汤圆，还有我们的小汤圆等等。那诸如此类加起来大概是有15道菜左右，可以一次让乡亲们呢体验以及吃到好吃的客家菜。
他们除了看你的手艺之外，你也开课，在短短1天内能把这个手艺学到吗？
当然可以啊。那我们这一次啊，飞机飞了好久才到了多伦多，那当然我们一定会要求我的学生啊，我们多伦多的学生要一起出来体验，然后再来赶紧做笔记，回去一定要马上做，因为这一次是2天的课程啊，所以说明天还可以再问，所以说这一次啊，我觉得下乡来以及过来这多伦多呢，直接与学生来互动呢是最快而且学最多的。
你是第一次到多伦多？你是第一次到多伦多吗？
对，第一次，我们是第一次到多伦多。这个活动是3年前有办过一次，那只有在 New York 以及 Vancouver 没有经过多伦多。那经过主委特别指派说要我来多伦多为他来做服务。
OK， 最后一个问题你觉得学生对于客家菜的感兴趣程度，另外他们的水平怎么样？
这一次我光早上炒一个客家小炒就有学员约莫大概是60岁吧，他说我活这么久我不知道客家小炒这样炒这么好吃让我觉得说非常的欣慰，我们出来的目的再累也是值得的。
可不可以先介绍自己？
大家好，我是小虎我是现在客家电台主持那个时代料理员的小虎。大家好。
你从厨艺多长时间
其实呢，我这个厨艺呢是我大学的时候开始打工开始。那因为小时候呢，我妈妈是办桌的，那我的骨头里面就留了这个血。那长大之后，我上大学之后来到台北呢，辗转的进到厨房之后，我发现我对这个蛮有兴趣的。虽然我念的是资管，但是我毕业之后呢，没有朝这个方向去走，就慢慢的走向餐饮业这个部分。那走这个部分大概有走了断断续续，大概走了20几年吧。
那么你这次来多伦多是示范客家菜？
对，这一次呢是我第一次踏入这个美国的本土，就是跟着我们的宝郎师、巴郎哥来到这美国。我们客委会呢准备大概10道这个解思乡的灵药、乡愁的灵药，然后我们带来这边，那可能会配合当地的一些食材去购买，做一些创新的料理这样子。那希望各位乡亲们尝到这些菜之后呢，能把它学起来，然后之后呢就自己做给自己吃。
怎么从客家菜里面体现客家文化了？
其实客家菜是又油又香对，那就是客家人本来就是一个很会腌制东西的一个节省的民族，这样讲所以很多的客家菜呢是从自己腌制的东西去做出来的，去变化出来的。然后从一些拜拜，比如说客家小炒，就是拜拜的一些肉鱿鱼豆干去把它结合做出来的。那这些东西都是一些比较平凡，不会很 很高很贵的一些食材去煮得出来，
是家常菜。
对，就是一些比较大家都能吃得起做的菜。
客家里面比较有名的菜是有哪几个？
客家大家比较知道就是四文四炒，四文就是文就是慢慢让它炖煮那种文啊，炒它就是4个炒，大概是要炒的话大概是什么？凤梨炒木耳啊，客家小炒啊，我四文四我都背不出来了嘞。
对，你知道你是可以说新生代的厨师了。其实时代不断进步，世界不定地在进步。那么作为就是厨师，厨艺方面怎么可以与时并进呢？
其实现在每个人都离不开吃的，对。那我们厨艺毕竟就是现在有很多的新的料理的方式啊。那现在也要结合说现在的人啊，要养生，又不想要吃太油太腻，那就要去想一些新的料理方式来配合这个大一的新的饮食的文化。
未来有什么计划没有？
未来什么计划？
对，开自己餐馆啊，怎么样的，对不对？
我本身有开一个小烧肉店，那这次出来就是希望，因为现在客家话好像年轻人越来越少讲，那希望去推广这整个客家文化，不管是吃的、歌唱的、各种演绎的，什么山歌什么表演的，希望这个客家这个语言啊，好好的传承下去。
妈妈在蒸那个就是发糕啊，她就对。